Hey there, everyone. Before we jump into the super fun story, I've got a quick question for you. Have you ever had a nosy neighbor who just couldn't stop poking into your business? Maybe they peeked over your fence or complained about something silly. Drop a yes or no in the comments below, I'd love to hear from you. Oh, and while you're at it, tell me where you're watching from today. Are you at home, at school, or maybe somewhere cool? And if you like stories like this one full of surprises and funny moments, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. That way, you won't miss any of the awesome tales I've got coming up. Okay, let's get started. Imagine a quiet little neighborhood. It's the kind of place where kids ride bikes, dogs bark at squirrels, and the houses all look cozy and neat. The sun is going down, painting the sky orange and pink, and my little solar lights are starting to turn on. They're these tiny lights I stuck along my front yard, soft, pretty glows that make my house look warm and friendly. I'm just a regular guy, and you can call me Jake. I like keeping my place nice, you know? Nothing fancy, just some flowers and those solar lights to brighten things up at night. But not everyone liked my lights. Across the street lived a lady named Karen. Oh boy, she wasn't just any neighbor, she was that Karen. You know the type. She walked around like she was the boss of the whole street. Her nose was always up in the air, and she acted like she made all the rules. Every single night, I'd catch her staring at my lights from her porch. She'd squint her eyes and mumble stuff under her breath, like my lights were the worst thing she'd ever seen. I'd be outside watering my plants or grabbing the mail, and there she was, glaring at me. It was kind of funny at first. I mean, they're just lights. Little glowing dots. What's the big deal, right? I thought she was just grumpy. Maybe she didn't get enough sleep or didn't like pretty things. I'd wave at her sometimes, trying to be nice. Hey, Karen. Good evening. I'd say with a big smile. But she'd just huff and turn away, like I'd done something awful. I figured she'd get over it eventually. People get mad about weird stuff sometimes, but then they forget and move on. Not Karen, though. Nope, she wasn't going to let it go. She had a plan brewing in her head, and I had no idea how wild things were about to get. What she didn't know, and this is the juicy part, was that trouble was already sneaking up on her. Yep, while she was busy hating on my lights, something big was about to turn her world upside down. Let me paint the picture for you. It's a normal evening, and I'm just chilling. My house looks good with those soft lights glowing reds, blues, and yellows twinkling like little stars. I'm proud of them. They don't even use much power because they're solar, which means the sun charges them up all day. Pretty cool, huh? I'm thinking everything's fine, just another peaceful night. Meanwhile, Karen's over there on her side of the street, plotting like she's in some secret spy movie. She'd stomp around her yard, pointing at my lights like they were breaking some giant rule. I'd hear her muttering stuff like, "Those lights are too bright," or "They don't belong here." I'd just shake my head and laugh a little. Too bright? They're tiny. Barely brighter than a firefly. But here's the thing, Karen wasn't just talking. She was doing something about it. She didn't like me ignoring her complaints, and she decided she'd had enough. I didn't know it yet, but she was about to take things to a whole new level. I'm talking crazy, over-the-top stuff that you wouldn't even believe. And me? I'm just sitting there, totally clueless, thinking my biggest problem is a grumpy neighbor who doesn't like my yard decorations. Oh, how wrong I was. Now, let's rewind a bit. I've lived in this neighborhood for a while. It's a nice place, friendly people, green grass, and birds chirping in the trees. I moved here because it felt calm, like a spot where nothing too wild ever happens. I put up those solar lights a few months ago because I saw them at the store and thought, hey, these would look awesome. They were easy to stick in the ground, and I loved how they made my house feel welcoming. Most of my neighbors thought they were neat too. Old Mr. Jenkins next door even said, "Jake, those lights are a great touch." Kids walking by would point and smile. Everyone liked them, everyone except Karen. Karen's house is right across from mine. It's big and fancy, with perfect bushes and a shiny mailbox. She's the kind of person who thinks she's in charge of everything. If someone parks their car a little crooked, she's out there measuring it with a ruler. If a kid's ball rolls into her yard, she keeps it like it's hers now. She's got this sign in her window that says HOA rules matter, and she takes it very seriously. HOA means Homeowners Association. It's like a club that makes rules for the neighborhood. I'm part of it too, but I don't fuss about little things. Karen, though. She's the queen of fussing. So, night after night, she'd watch my lights. I started noticing her more and more. Sometimes she'd stand on her porch with her arms crossed, just staring. Other times, she'd walk right up to the edge of her yard, close to my lights, and shake her head. I'd peek out my window and think, what's her problem? I even checked the HOA rules once, just to be sure. Guess what? Nothing in there says solar lights are bad. They're quiet, they're small, and they don't bother anyone. But Karen didn't care about that. She made up her own rules in her head, and she decided my lights were trouble. Here's where it gets good. One night, I'm inside eating dinner pizza, my favorite, when I hear her voice outside. She's loud, like she wants the whole street to hear. I peek out, and she's on her phone, pacing back and forth on her porch. Yes, hello. I need help right now, she's saying. I lean closer to the window, curious. Who's she calling? Then I hear it, this is an emergency. There's a problem across the street. My jaw drops. An emergency? Across the street? That's me. She's talking about my house. I'm thinking, no way. Is she really this mad about my lights? That's when I realize, Karen's not just grumpy, she's gone full on wild. She's calling someone big to come deal with me, all because of some tiny glowing lights. I'm standing there, pizza slice in my hand, totally shocked. What's she going to do? Get me in trouble for making my yard look nice? I laugh a little because it's so silly, but deep down, I'm wondering what's coming next. Little did I know, Karen's big move was about to backfire in the funniest way possible, and she had no clue the real trouble was already headed her way. So, here's my big question for you: what would you do if someone called the cops on you for something as goofy as solar lights? Would you laugh it off, get mad, or maybe put up even more lights just to mess with them? Drop your answer in the comments. I can't wait to see what you say. Stick around, because this story's about to get even crazier. Okay, let's dive into the next part of this crazy story. Things are about to get wild, so hold on tight. You remember Karen, right? That grumpy neighbor who hated my solar lights? Well, she wasn't just a little annoyed, she was obsessed. I mean, totally fixated, like my lights were her biggest enemy in the whole wide world. Every single day, she'd stomp across the street to my yard, her face all scrunched up like she'd just smelled something yucky. She'd stand there, squinting at my little glowing lights like they jumped up and insulted her personally. Those things are too bright, she'd yell, putting her hands on her hips like she was the boss of everything. They're against HOA rules, Jake. You can't have them. HOA rules are those neighborhood rules I told you about before, the ones Karen loved so much. She'd point at my lights like they were some big crime. I'd just smile at her, trying to stay nice. Karen, I'd say, they're solar lights. They run on sunshine, they're good for the planet, and they barely even glow. It was true, my lights were tiny, soft dots of color, not some giant spotlight. But Karen? She didn't care one bit about what I said. She'd just huff, like a dragon puffing smoke, and march back to her house, muttering stuff like, I'll do something about this, you wait and see. At first, I thought she was just being silly. I mean, who gets that mad about a few little lights? They weren't hurting anyone. They made my yard look pretty, and most people liked them. I figured she was all talk, like when someone says they're going to do something big but never really does. Maybe she'd complain for a while and then forget about it, right? Nope. Not Karen. She wasn't the forgetting type. She was the kind of person who'd hold onto a grudge forever, like a kid who won't share their candy even after Halloween's over. Day after day, she kept coming over. Sometimes she'd show up in the morning, her hair still messy from sleep, pointing at my lights like they'd kept her up all night. They're a problem, Jake, she'd snap. Other times, she'd wait until the sun went down and the lights flicked on. Then she'd march out in her slippers, shaking her fist at them. I'd watch from my window, trying not to laugh. It was so weird. I'd wave and say, "Good night, Karen," but she'd just glare and stomp off. I started wondering if she had anything else to do besides bug me about my yard. One time, I even tried talking to her nicely. I walked over to her porch with a big smile and said, "Hey, Karen, why do you hate the lights so much? They're just for fun." She crossed her arms and looked at me like I'd asked the dumbest question ever. "They don't belong here," she said, all serious. "This neighborhood has rules, and you're breaking them." I scratched my head. "But the HOA book doesn't say anything about solar lights," I told her. I'd checked. She didn't like that answer. Her face turned red, and she shouted, "Well, they should be against the rules." Then she turned around and slammed her door. Slam. Just like that. I went back home, shrugging. Okay, I thought, she's mad, but she'll get tired of this eventually. I mean, how long can someone stay upset about something so small? Turns out, Karen could stay mad forever. She wasn't just complaining anymore, she was planning. And I had no idea how far she'd take it. Then came the night everything changed. I was inside my house, sitting on my comfy couch, eating some popcorn. It was dark outside, and my solar lights were doing their thing, glowing all soft and pretty. I was relaxed, thinking it was just another normal evening. But then I heard something. A loud voice. Karen's voice. I peeked out my window, and there she was, pacing back and forth on her porch like a lion in a cage. She had her phone pressed to her ear, and she was yelling into it. Yelling loud enough for the whole street to hear. "Yes, 911, she said, her voice sharp and angry. "I need an officer right now. There's a disturbance." I froze. 911? That's the number you call for emergencies, like if your house is on fire or someone's hurt? My popcorn almost fell out of my hands. A disturbance? What was she talking about? I leaned closer to the window, trying to hear more. "It's across the street," she shouted. "It's been going on too long, and I can't take it anymore." "Across the street? That's my house. My lights?" She was calling the cops on my solar lights. I couldn't believe it. My jaw dropped, and I just stood there, staring out the window like a statue. Was she serious? Calling 911 over some tiny glowing dots in my yard? I wanted to laugh because it was so ridiculous, but I was also kind of shocked. Who does that? I mean, I've heard of people getting mad about loud music or barking dogs, but lights? Little eco-friendly lights that don't even make noise? This was next level crazy. I watched her pace some more, her slippers slapping the porch floor. She kept talking into the phone, saying stuff like, "It's a problem. Someone needs to fix this." I shook my head, thinking, "Karen, you've lost it?" I figured the 911 people would tell her to chill out. I mean, they've got real emergencies to deal with, right? They're not going to send cops for something this silly. At least, that's what I hoped. But Karen sounded so sure of herself, like she was about to win some big battle. She even smirked a little, like she thought she'd finally gotten me. What she didn't know, and this is the best part, was that her big, dramatic plan was about to flop. Big time. While she was busy yelling into her phone, acting like she was the hero of the neighborhood, something else was already happening. Trouble wasn't coming for me, it was coming for her. Yep, Karen had no clue that her own sneaky secrets were about to get her caught. She thought she was so smart, calling the cops on me, but she was about to find out she'd made a huge mistake. I sat back down on my couch, still holding my popcorn, and watched her through the window. My heart was beating a little faster now. What was going to happen? Would the cops really show up? And why did I have this funny feeling that Karen's night was about to get a lot worse than mine? I didn't know it yet, but the real fun was just starting. Her big plan to get me in trouble was going to blow up right in her face, and I couldn't wait to see how it all played out. Alright, let's keep this story rolling. Things are getting juicy now, so get ready for some surprises. The next evening comes around, and I'm just relaxing at home. I'm on my couch, all cozy with a blanket, munching on some chips. My solar lights are outside, glowing like usual little happy dots in my yard. I'm not thinking about Karen or her big 911 call from the night before. I figure she's done being dramatic, right? Wrong. Suddenly, I see something outside my window, flashing lights. Red and blue, spinning around like a disco party. My heart does a little jump. Cops? Oh no, are they here for me? I hop up fast, dropping my chips on the couch. I run to the door and step outside, my sneakers still untied. I'm expecting some grumpy police officer to march over and say, "Hey, Jake, what's with these dangerous solar lights?" I mean, that's what Karen wanted, right? She called 911, saying my lights were a big problem. So I'm standing there on my porch, ready to explain that they're just tiny, harmless glows. But then here's where it gets super weird. The cop car isn't parked in front of my house. Nope, it's right in front of Karen's place. What's going on? I sneak over to my window and peek out, trying to see without being too nosy. Karen's out there on her lawn, and she's not happy. She's waving her arms around like she's trying to fly away, pointing at my yard like it's the worst thing ever. I can hear her shouting, even from inside my house. "Those lights are a menace," she yells, her voice loud and mad. "They're ruining everything." A menace? My little lights? I almost laugh because it's so silly, but I'm too curious to giggle yet. Why are the cops at her house if she's yelling about me? There's this tall police officer standing near her. He's got a tired look on his face, like he's heard this kind of yelling a million times before. He's nodding at Karen, letting her talk, but he doesn't seem too excited about it. Then he looks over at me. I'm still by my window, peeking out, and I give him a little wave. I'm confused, and my wave probably looks goofy, but I don't know what else to do. The officer starts walking my way, leaving Karen on her lawn still flapping her arms. My stomach does a flip. Uh-oh, here it comes, I think. He's going to ask about the lights. He stops at the edge of my yard, his boots crunching on the grass. "Hey, you Jake," he says, his voice calm but kind of serious. I nod, swallowing hard. Yeah, that's me. I'm ready to defend my lights, so I laugh a little and say, "Let me guess, this is about my solar lights?" "That's Karen for you, she hates them." I point at her across the street, still yelling about how awful I am. The officer smirks, just a tiny smile, like he's in on some secret joke. Then he leans closer and lowers his voice, so Karen can't hear. "Funny thing is," he says, "we were already on our way here, not for you." My eyebrows shoot up so high they almost hit my hair. Not for me? What does that mean? My brain starts spinning with questions. If the cops weren't coming for my lights, then why were they here? I stare at the officer, waiting for him to say more, but he doesn't. He just gives me that little smirk again, like he knows something I don't. Then he turns around and walks back to Karen, who's still shouting about how my lights are the worst thing ever. I'm left standing there, scratching my head, totally lost. What's Karen gotten herself into? Why were the cops already coming here? I duck back inside and peek out the window again, watching like it's a TV show. Karen's still going nuts, pointing at my house and telling the officer all about how my lights break the rules. The tall cop nods some more, writing stuff down on a little notepad. I can't hear everything she's saying now, but her face is red, and she looks madder than ever. I start wondering, what if this isn't just about me? What if something else is happening? That officer's words keep bouncing around in my head. "We were already on our way here, not for you." It's like a mystery, and I'm dying to figure it out. I grab my chips again and sit by the window, keeping my eyes on Karen's lawn. The cop's still talking to her, but he doesn't look mad or worried. He looks bored. Like he's heard this story before and just wants to go home. Karen, though, she's acting like she's the star of some big drama. She keeps pointing at my lights, saying stuff like, "They're too bright. They're against the rules." The officer glances at my yard, but he doesn't come back to me. He just keeps writing in his notepad, nodding like he's only half listening. I start thinking back to the night before, when Karen called 911. She was so sure she'd get me in trouble. She paced her porch, yelling into her phone about a disturbance. I thought she was being ridiculous, and maybe the cops did too. But now they're here, and they're not even looking at my lights anymore. They're focused on her. My mind starts racing. Did Karen do something wrong? Is that why they were already coming? I mean, she's always bossing people around, acting like she owns the street. Maybe she finally ticked off the wrong person. I watch a little longer, and then something clicks. Karen's always talking about the HOA rules, right? She's got that sign in her window, and she's always telling everyone what they can and can't do. But what if she broke a rule? What if she's been hiding something sneaky? I lean closer to the window, my nose almost touching the glass. The officer's asking her questions now, and she's starting to look nervous. Her arms aren't waving as much, and her voice isn't as loud. She's fidgeting, like a kid who got caught sneaking cookies. I can't hear what the cop's saying, but I see him point at her house, not mine. Karen shakes her head fast, like she's saying, no, no, no. My heart beats quicker. This is getting good. Whatever's happening, it's not about my lights anymore. It's about her. That officer's sneaky little hint not for you keeps playing in my head. I'm starting to think Karen's in some kind of trouble, and she doesn't even know how big it is yet. She thought she was so smart, calling the cops on me, but now it's like the tables are turning. I sit back on my couch, munching my chips, still watching out the window. The flashing lights make cool patterns on my wall, and I'm hooked. What's going to happen next? Why were the cops already coming for Karen? I don't have the answers yet, but I can feel it, something big is coming. Karen's out there, still trying to blame me, but I've got a funny feeling she's about to get a huge surprise. And me? I'm just sitting here, waiting to see how this all shakes out, with my solar lights glowing away like nothing's wrong. Okay, here we go. This is the part where everything gets super exciting. The story's about to explode with a big surprise, so get ready. I'm still peeking out my window, watching Karen yell about my solar lights. She's out there on her lawn, waving her arms like she's trying to scare off a flock of birds. The tall cop's just nodding at her, looking tired, while I'm munching my chips, wondering what's up. Then, out of nowhere, I hear this low rumble. Another cop car rolls up the street, lights flashing red and blue, pulling right in front of Karen's house. 2 cop cars now? My eyes get wide. This is getting wild. Karen doesn't even notice the new car at first. She's too busy shouting, pointing at my yard like I'm the bad guy. Those lights are ruining everything, she's yelling, her voice all loud and grumpy. But then the door of the second cop car opens, and another officer steps out. This one's a lady with a serious face, and she doesn't waste any time. "Ma'am," she calls out, her voice strong and clear. "Karen, we need to talk." Karen stops yelling, like someone hit the pause button on her. She's mid-sentence, her mouth open, her fingers still pointing at me. She looks like a statue, frozen in the middle of her big tantrum. "What?" she snaps, spinning around to face the new cop. "I called you about him." She jabs her finger at me again, like I'm the whole problem. I'm standing on my porch now, watching this like it's a movie. My heart's beating fast because I don't know what's happening, but it's getting good. The first cop, the tall guy, shakes his head, real slow. "Actually," he says, his voice calm but firm, "we're here for something else." Karen blinks at him, confused. "Something else," she says, her voice getting squeaky. The tall cop nods. "Yeah. We got a tip about some illegal activity at this address." "Illegal activity? At her address?" My jaw drops so low it almost hits the floor. I'm holding my breath, staring at them. Karen's face goes white, like all the color just ran away. She looks like she's seen a ghost. "What are you talking about?" she says, her voice shaky now. The lady cop steps closer, holding a little notebook. "We're talking about unpermitted construction," she says, looking right at Karen. "And fines you didn't pay." Karen's eyes get big, and she starts shaking her head fast. "No, no, that's not true," she says, but she doesn't sound so sure anymore. I'm standing there, totally shocked. Unpermitted construction? Fines. What does that even mean? Then it hits me, the cops start walking toward Karen's backyard, and I remember something. A few months ago, I saw her building this huge, ugly shed back there. It was giant, all lopsided and painted this weird green color. I thought it looked funny, but I didn't say anything because it's her yard, right? Turns out, that shed was a big no-no. The HOA rules, the ones Karen loves so much, say you can't just build stuff like that without asking first. You need permission, and Karen didn't get it. She thought no one would notice, but someone did. Someone told the cops. The tall cop's talking now, pointing at her backyard. "We got a report about that shed," he says. "It's against the rules, And you never paid the fines for it. Karen's mouth opens and closes, like a fish out of water. She's trying to say something, but nothing's coming out. I can't believe it. All this time, she's been yelling at me about my tiny solar lights, saying I'm breaking the rules. But she's the one who built a giant shed she wasn't supposed to. My lights are little and harmless, but her shed? It's huge and ugly, and now she's in trouble for it. The lady cop pulls out some papers and starts reading stuff to Karen. We were already on our way to check this out, she says. Then we got your 911 call about lights across the street. She glances at me, and I swear I see her roll her eyes a little. I almost laugh, but I'm too busy watching Karen's face. She looks like she wants to disappear. My call, she squeaks. But I called about him. His lights are the problem. The tall cop shakes his head again. Your call just made us get here faster, he says. We were coming for you. Oh my gosh, talk about irony. Irony's when something happens the opposite of what you expect, and this is perfect. Karen thought she was so smart, calling 911 to get me in trouble for my lights. She was sure the cops would come and tell me to take them down. But instead, her big plan backfired big time. The cops were already coming to her house because of her sneaky shed. She didn't know it, but she basically called the police on herself. I'm standing there, my jaw still dropped, trying not to giggle. This is too good. Karen's not yelling anymore. She's just staring at the cops, her hands twisting together like she's nervous. The tall cop walks around to her backyard, shining a flashlight on that ugly shed. Yup, he says, this is definitely against the rules. The lady cop nods. You'll need to take it down, she tells Karen. And pay those fines. Karen's shaking her head again, but she's not arguing now. She knows she's caught. All her big talk about rules, and she's the one who broke them. I step back a little, leaning against my porch railing, still watching. My solar lights are glowing behind me, all soft and pretty, not bothering anyone. The cops don't even look at them anymore. They're too busy with Karen and her giant shed mess. I start piecing it all together in my head. Someone must have seen that shed and told the HOA or the cops. Maybe a neighbor got tired of Karen bossing everyone around and decided to snitch. And then, when Karen called 911 about my lights, it just made the cops come quicker to check her out, not me. Karen's voice gets quiet now. This is a mistake, she mumbles, but the cops aren't buying it. They've got proof papers and reports and everything. She's stuck. I feel a little bad for her, but mostly I'm amazed. She spent all this time trying to make me look bad, and now she's the one in hot water. My lights? They're fine. They've been fine the whole time. But Karen's shed? It's a big, fat problem, and she can't wiggle out of it. The lady cop writes something down, and the tall cop takes pictures of the shed with his phone. Karen just stands there, looking smaller than I've ever seen her. All her loud, bossy energy is gone. I shake my head, still blown away. She thought she'd win by calling the cops on me, but she ended up losing big time. The irony's so thick you could scoop it up with a spoon. I can't wait to see what happens next, but one thing's for sure, Karen's not the queen of the neighborhood anymore. Okay, let's wrap this up with a happy ending. The cops are done with me now, they don't even look at my yard anymore. My solar lights are still glowing, all pretty and peaceful, like nothing ever happened. Instead, the tall cop and the lady cop are busy with Karen. They're in her backyard, measuring that big, ugly shed with a tape measure. They're writing stuff down on their notepads, nodding to each other like they've got it all figured out. Karen's standing there, looking all flustered. She's trying to talk her way out of it, saying stuff like, "This is outrageous. You've got it all wrong." But her voice is shaky, and no one's listening to her excuses. The cops just keep doing their job. I'm on my porch, watching it all go down. Neighbors start peeking out their doors and windows, curious about the flashing lights and Karen's loud voice. They're whispering to each other, pointing at her house. One guy across the street even claps his hands and smiles at me. "Way to go, Jake," he yells. I grin and give him a thumbs up. It feels good to know I'm not the bad guy here. Karen's the one in trouble, and everyone's starting to see it. The lady cop walks up to Karen with some papers. "You've got a big fine to pay," she says, her voice calm but serious. And that shed? It's got to come down. It's against the rules. Karen's eyes get wide, and she shakes her head fast. A fine? Tear it down? No way, she says, but the cops don't budge. The tall cop nods. Yup, he says. You didn't get permission to build it? That's a problem. Karen's mouth opens like she wants to argue more, but she's out of words. She knows she's caught, and there's no way out. By the end of the night, it's all settled. Karen's stuck with a fat fine. She's got to pay a bunch of money for breaking the rules. Plus, she's got a warning, take that shed down, or she'll be in even more trouble. My solar lights? They're still shining, all bright and happy, not bothering a soul. The cops finish up and start walking back to their cars. The tall one looks at me and tips his hat, like a cowboy in a movie. Keep those lights up, man, he says quietly. They're fine. I smile big and nod. Thanks. I say. The lady cop waves a little too, and then they drive off, lights flashing as they go. Karen's left standing on her porch, glaring at me across the street. Her arms are crossed, and her face is all scrunched up like she's super mad. But she doesn't say anything. For once, she's got nothing left to yell about. She tried to get me in trouble, but it all flipped around on her. Now she's the one who messed up, and everyone knows it. The neighbors are still watching, whispering and giggling. One lady even says, about time someone caught her, loud enough for me to hear. I laugh a little and head back inside. My lights keep glowing outside, soft and pretty, just like always. Karen's big plan failed, and justice got served. She's not the boss of the street anymore tonight, she learned that rules go for her too. I feel good, knowing I didn't do anything wrong. It's a win for me, and a big lesson for Karen. Alright, friends, we've made it to the end of this crazy story. Let's sit back and think about what just happened, because it's a good one. So, there you have it. Karen, the lady who tried to ruin my night with her big, loud complaining, ended up shining a giant spotlight on her own mess. Isn't that wild? She thought she was so sneaky, calling the cops on my little solar lights, but instead, she got herself caught. Funny how life works, right? 1 minute, she's pointing fingers at me, acting like I'm the bad guy, and the next, she's the one in trouble. It's like a big surprise party she didn't want. Sometimes, I guess, things don't go the way people plan. Karen was so busy yelling about my lights, saying they were wrong and bad, that she didn't stop to check her own backyard. She had that huge, ugly shed hiding back there, breaking all the rules she loved to boss everyone about. It's kind of like when you're pointing at someone else, but you don't see the mess behind you. The people who point fingers the loudest, the ones who act like they're perfect, are sometimes the ones hiding the most. Karen sure was. She thought she could trick everyone, but the truth came out, and it wasn't pretty for her. I learned something cool from all this. Next time someone's giving you a hard time, picking on you for something small or silly, maybe just sit back and watch. Don't get too mad or upset, let them talk. Chances are, they've got their own storm brewing, something big and messy they don't want anyone to see. Karen's storm was that shed, and it rained all over her parade. She tried to make my night bad, but in the end, she was the one who got soaked. It's like life has a way of fixing things, making sure the truth comes out when it needs to. What do you think about that twist? Wasn't it awesome how it all flipped around? I was just minding my own business, enjoying my lights, and Karen thought she'd win by calling the cops. But nope. She lost, big time, and I got to keep my lights glowing. It's a happy ending for me, and a big oops for her. I'd love to hear what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me if you liked the story or if that surprise made you laugh. Did it keep you hooked? I hope it did. Oh, and here's a fun question for you, have you ever had a Karen moment in your life? You know, someone who got all bossy or mean about something little, like Karen did with my lights? Maybe it was a neighbor, a kid at school, or even someone in your family. Did they try to make trouble for you, only to end up looking silly themselves? I bet you've got a good story. Share it with me in the comments. I can't wait to read what you say. It's so fun hearing from you guys. This whole thing makes me think about how we treat people. Karen was quick to judge me, quick to say my lights were bad, but she didn't look at herself first. Maybe if she'd been nicer, or just left me alone, she wouldn't be in this mess. It's a good reminder: be kind, be fair, and don't be too fast to point fingers. You never know what might come back to surprise you. I'm glad I stayed calm and didn't fight with her. I just let the truth do its thing, and it worked out perfectly. So, what's the big lesson here? I think it's this: sometimes, the quiet ones, the ones who don't make a fuss, end up okay. And the loud ones, the ones who think they're in charge, might trip over their own feet. Karen tripped hard, didn't she? She thought she was the queen of the street, but now she's got a fine and a shed to tear down. Me. I'm still here, with my lights shining, feeling pretty good. Life's funny that way. It likes to teach us stuff when we least expect it. I hope this story made you smile or maybe even cheer a little. It's cool to see how things turn out sometimes, especially when the good guys like me and my lights come out on top. If someone's bugging you about something small, don't worry too much. Keep being you, keep doing what makes you happy, and let life sort it out. It worked for me, and it might work for you too. Thanks for sticking with me through this wild tale. You're the best for reading all the way to the end. I've got more stories coming, so don't go anywhere. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet, and I'll see you next time. What kind should I tell next? Something funny, spooky, or maybe another neighbor adventure? Let me know in the comments. Stay awesome, friends, and keep shining bright, just like my solar lights. See you soon. Oh, one last thing: think about this: what would you do if you were me? Would you keep the lights up, or maybe add more just to see what happens? Tell me your ideas. I bet you've got some great ones. Okay, that's really it now. Bye for now, and take care.